So looking at the 1923 Munich Putsch. Putsch means uprising, and in 1923 the Weimar government faced a right-wing uprising led by Adolf Hitler along with the support of General Ludendorff. Gustav von Kahr was the Bavarian Prime Minister at the time, who was also a right-wing politician. We're going to have a look now at the causes of the Munich Putsch, and the first cause that we're going to have a look at is hatred. Here. So the right-wing extremists, the Nazi Party, had a hatred of the Treaty of Versailles, especially in particular the Walk-Gill Clause, Article 231, because many right-wing activists had been soldiers and they had felt betrayed by their government, the idea that they had been stabbed in the back. Secondly, we can look at Hitler as a cause of the Munich Putsch. Hitler, as leader of the Nazi Party, he also hated the Weimar Republic. He himself had been impressed by Mussolini's seizure of power and began to consider the idea himself. He was the driving force behind the Munich Putsch. We can also have a look at the idea of humiliation. The invasion and occupation of the Ruhr by the French was humiliating for the people of Germany. The fact that the German army couldn't drive the French out of the Ruhr showed how weak Germany was. The SA, being another reason for the Munich Putsch, were armed support. They were ready for a fight in 1923, supporting the Nazi Party. The SA weren't the only support that the Nazi Party had in 1923. Hitler was also confident in support from other right-wing groups, including von Kahr, the army, and also General Ludendorff, who was a respected World War I general, and he did bring himself more support to Hitler's cause. Lastly, the Nazi Party had been growing in strength and numbers. Hitler was sure that once the putsch started, others would support their cause. So altogether, there are the reasons for the Munich Putsch. It might be up to you to decide which you think is the most important cause or the most important reason for the Munich Putsch, and to explain your own judgment. So what were the key features of the Munich Putsch? A key feature means what happened during. So you might be asked to explain in your exam what happened during the Munich Putsch, to explain the key features. Firstly, on the evening of November 1923, the 9th of November, Hitler and 600 Nazis stormed into a beer hall in Munich where von Kahr was holding a political meeting. Hitler then put von Kahr into a room and held him at gunpoint to try and get promises of support from him for the Nazi Party and Hitler's planned takeover. Von Kahr then agreed to support Hitler and the Nazi Party. The leaders were then allowed, including von Kahr, to leave the building, and they then began to organise troops and police to resist Hitler's planned takeover and march through Munich. Hitler, however, continued with his march with the support of the SA. The Nazis only had around 2,000 rifles, and they were no match for the well-armed police who came to resist them. As the two forces met on the street in November 1923, shots were fired and 16 Nazis were killed. The Nazi Party then scattered and fled, and Hitler disappeared. 2 days later, Hitler was arrested and the Nazi Party were banned. So overall, that makes up the basic outline of the Munich Putsch. So what were the effects of the Munich Putsch? Well, firstly and immediately, Hitler was arrested along with Ludendorff and tried for treason, which was a crime against the state. The trial lasted 1 month and was in 1924. Hitler had shown poor leadership of the Nazi Party and he'd fled the scene, and it showed that the police there had not supported the putsch in the way that Hitler had thought. However, it was not all bad news, because the putsch had given Hitler national publicity. He was introduced to the German public, his ideas were printed in newspapers, he made comments on the weakness of the Weimar Republic, his hatred of the Treaty of Versailles, his views on the November criminals, and these were all published in national newspapers. He was allowed during his trial to put forward his political views, and Hitler became famous. He was, however, found guilty of treason, but the judges who were sympathetic to his cause and ideas gave him only the minimum sentence of 5 years in prison. Ludendorff was not charged. Of the 5 years that Hitler was sentenced to, he only served 9 months in Landsberg prison, and at this time he was allowed as many visitors as he wanted. Whilst in prison, Hitler completed his autobiography. You can see a picture of it there, Mein Kampf, which means my struggle. This book also outlined his political views. Many say that being in prison allowed Hitler time to reflect on his views and the organisation of the Nazi Party. They believe that it was in prison that Hitler decided to change tactics. If he was ever going to become leader of Germany and fulfil his ambition of making Germany a great country again, he needed to do so differently. Here's a quote from Hitler: "It's the greatest fortune for us that the Putsch collapsed, because the takeover of Germany would have been impossible as we were not prepared. The Nazis killed gave us the most effective propaganda for the Nazis." Okay, so although the Munich Putsch can be considered a failure because the Nazi Party did not take power and their leader was arrested and they in themselves as a political movement were banned, you can also look at the successes of the Munich Putsch, the effect that it had in the fact that it did give Hitler and the Nazi Party national publicity. It did give them an opportunity to share their political ideas and views. It gave Hitler the opportunity to change tactics, to think about the organisation of the Nazi Party, and that's what we'll be looking at in the next section.